Good afternoon and welcome everybody. It's great to see a strong turnout of people here for our seminar today. My name is Dan Silver from the University of Toronto, Department of Sociology, as well as the Urban Genome Project inside the School of Cities. The Urban Genome Project is one of the Urban Challenge projects in the School of Cities, and I have been co-leading that along with Mark Fox and Rob Bright. This year in the Urban Genome Project, we're hosting a series of seminars around the theme of the application and extension of evolutionary concepts to city life. This is the second in our seminar series, and we are delighted to have Juste Rambaud with us today. Who will be talking presenting his paper, Modeling Urban Evolution and Co-Evolution in Systems of Cities. We've been having a dialogue conversation with Juste this morning, and he's been an incredibly generous interlocutor with us already. And so definitely looking forward to extending that now in this presentation and going forward. Let me just tell you a bit about Juste, his background, and then we'll move forward to the talk. Juste was trained as an engineer initially, and then he went on to do his PhD in geography. There, studying the co-evolution of transportation networks from a quantitative perspective, combining spatial data science and the development of simulation models. He was had a postdoctoral position at the Institute of Complex Systems in Paris. And now he's moved on, and he's at the Center for Advanced Spatial Analysis at University College London, working on land use transport interaction models within the Urban Dynamics Lab project. Broadly speaking, his research focuses on one side on developing simulation models for urban systems at many different levels and scales, macro down to micro, and on the other side on exploring how new methodologies can help to validate simulation models, for example, with spatial sensitivity analysis. He works in other areas as well, bibliometrics, science mapping, using that to grasp multiple perspectives on interdisciplinarity, which is, of course, one of the themes of this seminar as well. We're trying to learn about and interact with people studying these issues, thinking about these issues from many different disciplinary angles. And so it's really a testament to that style of research to have Juste with us today, who's doing it himself, and to have him as part of this dialogue is really exciting. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Juste, and he'll give a presentation, and then we'll have some open question and answer session after that. So thank you, Juste.
So thanks a lot for the kind introduction, and thanks again for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here. Let me share my screen, my slide preview. Okay. You should see them now?
Yes.
Okay, let me begin. How much time do I have? Because maybe I have a bit too much.
If we could have room for maybe 15 or 20 minutes of questions, we'll stop at 1. So however you want to slice that.
So I'll try to be 45 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so I will present a broad synthesis and works on urban evolution and co-evolution in system of cities. So I will first give a synthesis of some work that has been done in Paris in Denis Plumin's team. So it is not my work in particular, and then detail more specifically this model of urban evolution linked to innovation diffusion, and then some results from my thesis on co-evolution urban system, and finally a bit of discussion. So first, before introducing the evolutionary urban theory, just to put a bit of context, but urban evolution has been already studied a lot in linked to the field of artificial life, and there is already a lot of work doing linked to an urban system and artificial life. So in this work, I studied the citation network of artificial life studies in urban systems, and you can see that you have a lot of subfields. Ranging from cellular automatons of urban growth, GIS studies, but also artificial societies, and ranging up to traffic studies and this kind of thing, and autonomous vehicles and so on. So, and there is also a lot of transfer of concepts, and the concept of urban evolution that the UGP team is exploring widely also comes from biology. So the concept like urban morphologies, bio-inspired design, urban ecology, anthropologies, and so on can be imported from for artificial life and biology. So what do we mean by urban evolution? We can see it. I won't give any definition because it was in the debates we had this morning. It's very difficult to have a definition. But yeah, broadly for now, seeing urban evolution as extending cultural evolution, where the cities will be, in this case, a particular case, the agents with a proper genome and evolutionary dynamics. So this approach was proposed by Denis Pumin, considering cities as system of within system of cities, so multiple scale systems, which will be co-evolving and in which the interaction between the city are crucial to determine the dynamics. So it was introduced in '97 based on works already done before, and since she wrote a lot. And so this is a scheme. So these two figures are a scheme of the view it takes on urban systems. So you've got these three fundamental scales, starting from the micro scale, so the actor of the city, so the household, the firms, and so on. And from this will emerge first the mesoscale of the urban area, where the properties are the urban morphology, the centralities, the urban function. And then these urban areas can be embedded into the macro scale of system of cities. And at this scale, so you zoom out, and then your temporal scale is 1 day, and the properties are hierarchy, functional diversity, spatial pattern, and so on. And on the right, it's a bit more detail on processes between scale. I won't detail everything. Okay, so in the context of this theory, a lot of models were introduced, in particular the SimPop models for simulating population. And it goes back, the SimPop 1 model goes back to '97, simultaneous to the first theoretical paper. And the idea was to have a dynamical model for, so agent-based model for human settlement dynamics. But it was not an urban evolution model in proper term, in terms of evolutionary process, but it was already called evolution. Then there was a SimPop 2 model, a bit more complex, with some different level of functions for cities, with some territories and some specialization of function between the cities. And then also this model were declined to different application on different thematic exploration. For example, in the thesis by Clara Schmidt, she started from the model SimPop local up to SimPop Clim. So SimPop local was a model designed to explain the emergence of a system of cities, starting from agricultural settlements, which are the same hierarchy, so no hierarchy in the system, up to a system of hierarchy, system of cities. And then the SimPop Net model was designed to explore the coevolution between the cities and the network. So it's here on the bottom. Most recent work, so this ERC project, so European Research Council project, was the most recent frame where the theory was developed. So this is a book giving a summary of the finding of this ERC project. And it ended like 3 or 4 years ago, so it's quite recent. So the idea was to build around 3 main axes. So the first one is to identify and to identify robustly some stylized fact on the system of cities, and to do that worldwide, so across main system of cities across the world. And then from this stylized fact to construct some simulation model, and this model had an explicative purpose. So trying to have stylized model in which you can test a causal assumption and so on. But another axis was also to build some tools and methods to explore simulation models, to be able to extract knowledge from the simulation models and to validate them. So it is an open mode software that I will detail a bit more later. Just to be sure, I cannot see the chat, but I hope it's still going. because I'm not seeing myself in the. Okay, let me go on. Okay, just a quick epistemological contextualization of this theory done by Frank Varenne in this book, looking at a bit at the history of geography. So if you start from Christaller long ago, it was more a top-down approach to geography, so the deduction of facts from theory. Then Berry in the 60s was more inducing conclusion from the empirical, so more bottom-up. And this approach by Denis Pumin is coined as abductive in the sense of an iterative interaction between the theoretical and the empirical. So really this strong combination of two and going back and forth between hypothesis, theoretical hypothesis, and then included models to go a bit further. And so the simulation model allows the synthesis between the theoretical and the empirical. And also also a bit of context of why we need this simulation model. So because a lot of disciplines don't really like simulation models and prefer just analytical model that they can solve and that they can easily understand. We think that these kind of models are necessary in geography because this kind of system are really complex, and they are complex on different viewpoints and regarding different definition of complexity. First, they have what we can call an ontological complexity. It means that they have a lot of dimensions that are complementary and that are not always correlated. So it's a multidimensionality of urban system, and you need a lot of viewpoints to understand urban systems. Then you've got also a dynamical complexity. So we know that these systems are non-algorithmic, and there is a strong path dependency in urban dynamics. So this is a link to dynamical complexity, so complexity in a dynamical system and chaos and so on. Then we also assume that you can have coevolution in the system, and coevolution is generally linked to complexity. And finally, a last viewpoint is emergence. We know that we have these multiple scales and emergence in urban systems. So for all these reasons, we suppose that simulation models are a good way to enter this. So then, in the context of history, a lot of knowledge was developed in different domains, what I would call domains. So it is the theory itself, which englobes everything. And then you've got the models, which are coupled with methods and tools, and which take from empirical studies and empirical data. So some PhD in the project were dedicated to the construction of consistent databases, for example. Then other theses were dedicated to empirical studies of urban system. And then other were more methodological, and everything was strongly coupled together. Just to give a more concrete view of this strong coupling between the different components, we can do a small citation network analysis of the key publication of this evolutionary urban theory. So starting from the two seminal papers, this Point-theory derivative, Evil, and Simpop paper. And then we reconstructed the citation network, taking the citing papers at level at 2 levels up, and then you got this citation network. And what we find is that the different communities in the network, which correspond roughly to the domain of knowledge, like one modeling community, one theoretical community, one data community, and so on. And we find that these are quite strongly integrated in terms of citation. So it means that you got this complementarity between the knowledge domains. And in terms of method and tools, a software was specifically designed. So in an interaction between geographers and computer scientists to build a tool to explore simulation models. So the model were integrated into the tool to be validated and explored. So what does this tool? It has 3 main functions. You can embed any model in any language. So whatever your model is coding on, you should be able to embed it as a black box. Then it gives transparent access to high-performance computing resources, because generally you should have a bit of knowledge in computer science to access this cluster or this computation grid. But here, since it was aimed at a geographer to use, the aim is to have very transparent access in the scripting language. And finally, it provides also a very transparent access to optimization and exploration algorithm. So you can go on the website, it's free, open source, and so on. And just to mention that the applications are open for the summer school that we do next June in Paris. Hopefully, people will be able to come. And it's really open to anyone who wants to learn about a new method to validate models. Okay, so now I will give a broad overview of a few results which are obtained in the project and linked between models and new methods. So, for example, I already mentioned the SimPOP local model for the emergence of system of cities. So this model was calibrated with a new genetic algorithm, which was distributed on a computation grid, so with Island Kim, and they were able to reach expected. So it's a figure in the red. It's the expected indicator for the final system of cities, and they were able to calibrate it with this new algorithm. So the reference is here. Similarly, they also developed another method, which is called the calibration profile, and which allows you to tell if a mechanism is necessary or sufficient in a model. Looking at the calibration error of the model, you will project all the best calibration on one dimension, on the parameter dimension. And so either you find you restrict your boundaries for the parameter, so it's kind of enhanced calibration, or you can also find that the parameter does nothing and it's always good, whatever the value of the parameters. It's the plot on the right, and in that case, you can simplify your model and remove some mechanism. So it's a kind of model simplification method. Then what they also did was some multi-modeling. So it was in the context of the Clémentine Coutinho thesis. Here, the idea is to start from what they call a model family. You have a lot of mechanisms, and from this mechanism, you can generate a lot of different models, so candidate models. And then from this, you use a specific calibration algorithm. So it's a niched genetic algorithm to calibrate altogether the model family. And then being able to discriminate between different candidate explanations for the style effect. So this is just a summary how the multi-models embed into a model complexification space. You can complexify the interaction between the agents, the interaction between the agents and the environment, and also different version of a mechanism. So it's in French. Also another example of a concurrent hypothesis. For example, for exchanges between cities, you can have a market or centralized interactions. Also for the city growth, it can be determined by environmental situation or through interactions. In the end, when you have all the best set of parameters for all models, you can do some statistical analysis and trying to see which variables and which mechanism explain best model fitting. So it's a kind of a meta-modeling approach. Just a quick other example of meta-modeling we did more recently with Denis Plumer and Eric Denis. It was comparing 6 different models stemming from this theory and on a very different system of cities. So, and we find that a different mechanism explain the urban growth in some systems and over in other systems. So you really have a complementary of different possible explanations. Okay, another method which was developed in this project was the PESE algorithm. So PESE for pattern space exploration, and it was applied on the Marius model, the one Andrew Shah already mentioned before. So the idea of this algorithm, it's a diversity search algorithm, and the idea is to explore all feasible space produced by the model. Because generally you will calibrate your model and find one parameter set that is satisfying, and from this you will be happy, and you won't try to push your model. So the idea of this algorithm is try to push your model and to look at everything that the model can produce. So it's going, as I say in the paper, beyond corroboration. And this plot shows in terms of population growth produced by the model and hierarchization. So the shaded areas are observed values, and the blue points are what the model can produce. So it shows that the model can go far beyond the real situation. And in some cases, it can say, okay, but maybe the model does too much and is too far from the reality. And then just to conclude on methods, it's some recent methods we developed, still in the context of OpenMOL and so on. It's what we call spatial sensitivity analysis. So it's extending the traditional way to do sensitivity analysis of models by including the spatial configuration. So coupling the model with some spatial generator, we look if the spatial initial configuration has influence on model outcomes. And a way of doing this is to be able to generate synthetic data, so spatial synthetic data at different scale that looks like real urban system. For example, on the left, at the mesoscopic scale, so it's this first paper, with correlation between population and network. And on the right is building configuration that generators that we calibrate. Okay, now I will switch to more specific details on the model. On the model of urban evolution based on innovation diffusion. So first of all, why innovation diffusion? To try to explain urban evolution. We know that it's a crucial process in artificial life evolutionary systems and in open-ended evolution. Then, on the contrary, we also know that we can use artificial societies like agent-based models to study dynamics of innovation. And in geographical terms, with Egerschwan and so on, we know that we have this hierarchical diffusion of innovation, and also that it can be a potential expression for urban scaling law. So what is the objective of this model? So the reference is here for the model. So the idea is really to systematically explore a simple model of urban evolution. So this model is at the macroscopic scale. And the idea is to have an explicit urban genome in the model and to have explicit processes of transmission and of mutation. So what is the rationale for the model? We have cities at the macroscopic scale and quite long time scale. It's like 50 years, 1 century. And it's simple because we characterize the city only in terms of population. And their genome will be a proportion of innovations. So here, what we mean by innovation can be anything social or technological. It's an abstract model. And each city will have a profile in terms of each innovation being adopted. So first innovation, 20%, second 50%, and so on. And we simplify and we assume that innovation occurs along only one dimension. So let's say it's only innovation in transportation infrastructure, or transportation technology, or it's only innovation in organizations or this kind of thing. Because when you think about it, it should be multidimensional, but then it really complicates the thing. So we extend the previous model by Jean-Marc Favreau and Denis Plumin, where the attractivity of cities is driven by level of innovation, and it will influence the population growth. And then we also have innovation diffusion through a neural spatial interaction model. And the mutation in cities is the apparition of new innovations. So I won't give any equation, but describe it with a scheme. So this is cities with a population on the genome. So you see here at the first step, you have only the red innovation everywhere, and the green just appeared in city 1, but it's not yet in other cities. Then you will diffuse it, the innovation in space. So city 1 diffuse innovation to city 2, city 3. So you've got this new updating of the genome. So this is a process of transmission of genome. So it's kind of the crossover if you want, but it's not really a crossover. Kind of. Then you've got the spatial interaction model for population growth of cities. So these arrows are flows between cities, and depending on the strength of the flows, of the cumulative flows for one city, you will update the population accordingly. And finally, you will mutate the genome, and here what occurred in city 1, that a new innovation appeared. And so the genome, you got this blue innovation that appeared. Okay, I said there was no equation, but still there are. I won't detail all the equation, but so you got this equation to do the crossover, to diffuse in space. It depends on one utility for innovation. Then it's an update of population. It's really a spatial interaction model. You assume you have this potential, and then you update the population accordingly to this spatial interaction potential. And finally, you got some process to introduce new innovation. So you've got a fixed innovativity parameter, and then it's proportional to the city size with a scaling parameter. And then you've got initial penetration rate and a new utility. So there is a way to randomly distribute it. Okay, then what are the model outcome? We look at the overall diversity of the system because it's important to be diverse in complex systems. Then also the total utility, so average utility of innovation, and the number of innovativity in total. So to what kind of system do we apply this model? For now, it's only on a synthetic system of cities because finding data for innovation diffusion is quite difficult, but for population is much easier. And also doing this way, we can have conclusion independent of geographical contingency. So it was a spatial sensitivity paper mentioned before. We want to know what is the behavior linked to the model dynamics themselves and the specific spatial configuration. So, okay, we just simulate an initial urban system with a wrong size law and so on, with 30 cities, and we simulate for 50 time steps. I won't detail all parameters, but you see, you already, it's supposed to be a quite simple model, but you already have a lot of parameters. So you've got the meta parameters that we explore also a bit, and then the model parameters in themselves. Okay, first of all, we just look at the statistical consistency. So do output indicators converge statistically, and it's quite fine. And so a few number of repetition is enough to have a good convergence. And then we do some basic grid exploration. So doing this number of parameter points. And we can get some conclusion from this. For example, you got an increase in diversity when you increase the interaction span with this plateau behavior. So interaction span between cities. But if you increase the span of innovation diffusion, it will decrease diversity. So it means that in terms of diversity, it's not very good to diffuse everywhere because actually the domaining innovation will kill the other ones. We will lose diversity. Then in terms of total innovation on hierarchy, we've got similar dynamics. And we find that systems with more interaction and diffusion are less unequal and innovate more. And finally, the most interesting indicator is utility. We find a kind of piecewise linear behavior. And for the high values of innovation parameter beta, it's very interesting because we find a maximum for intermediate values of spatial interaction of DG. So it could correspond to some kind of emergence of a regional innovation cluster. So in that context, with intermediate DG, you've got like a kind of local interaction between cities. And in that context, in terms of global utility, it's better than interacting with everyone. So it's better to be regional and having this regional cluster than a globalized system. Okay, just looking at the correlation. It seems from the grid expression that innovation and population are quite correlated, but in fact, when you look at the whole parameter space, they are not that much correlated. It means that there are also over behavior that we overlooked in the grid expression. And finally, we can also try to optimize this model with an EG2 algorithm and optimize for a complementary objective of utility and diversity. And we find three compromise regimes with an intermediate one, which correspond to a low level of innovation diffusion. Okay, quick discussion. Global integration is not necessary to be optimized in terms of utility. And we show that we can simulate this kind of evolution model and a kind of urban genome. So it's a way to approach it. So a lot of possible extension, multidimensional urban genome, as I mentioned it. Real system of cities is a very difficult and open question, I think. Like finding data for innovation dynamic is difficult. And also maybe at overscale and toward multi-scale models. Okay, how I'm doing with time? It's 40, I think I have 30 minutes. 20. Okay, I will. Sorry, it's a bit quick.
Yeah, maybe 10 more minutes or so.
Okay. Okay, maybe I will skip one of the model of co-evolution. Okay, so now I will detail some results, synthesize some results from my PhD thesis on coevolution. So why coevolution and coevolution of what? My subject was interaction between networks and territories. And we know that accessibility is quite important in determining coevolution between transportation network and territories. So this map are some example of accessibility changes in China with a big bridge between Hong Kong and Macau, and also changes in accessibility due to public transport. And we can expect this to have a strong influence on land use changes on long time. So I will go directly to everything. What I propose in my thesis is a specific definition of coevolution. So, okay, theoretical context is still the evolutionary band theory, and in terms of network, we take a theory proposed by Dupuy, the theoretical theory of networks. And this definition is kind of operational, and it's not directly linked to the biological evolution definition. And it's a 3 level because you can do model at different level. Actually, the most interesting level is the intermediate one, where you have coevolution of population within a coevolution niche. So at the advanced level, it's just saying you've got a reciprocal influence between agents. And like the global system, it's in terms of how it was used by geographical model, it means that whole agent is a system are iterating, but it's not a coevolution in the proper sense. So the closer to the biological coevolution is this level of niche and population level. So why is it operational? Because we can also have a measure for this. So we combine, we compute a lag correlation between variables and then do some data mining on it to try to measure this coevolution. So just an illustration of this method which was designed. You've got your lag correlation on the left curves. From this, you've got with your pattern between variables, and you can construct some causal graph between the variables. So it's a weak Granger causality because the data is noisy, we don't have much data and so on. So it remains to weak causality, and there is nothing with instrumental variables or things like this. Okay, it was just validated on, I will skip this, validated on synthetic data, and also applied of a previous model we did to try to identify coevolution regimes between the variables, network and population variables within this model, which we can control. And we found that it was able to identify this regime. Then it was also applied on empirical data on the Grand Paris Express project, and we found, for example, anticipated effect of new infrastructure on real estate prices. Okay, what are the modeling contribution? A macroscopic scale model and mesoscopic scale models. I will detail a bit more one now. So the mesoscopic model is aimed at including functional properties into a mesoscopic morphogenesis model. So this is the rationale for it. We couple a grid population model with a vector transportation network. And you've got path values, and you will attribute your population with preferential attachment and then diffuse it. So it's a reaction diffusion model. And then you have a network growth processes with multi-modeling. So this is basically the structure of the model. You've got your grid with population cell, and you've got your network, your road network with nodal links, and the both are strongly coupled. So just to a bit of detail of how the network evolves. First, we add new nodes, and then it's a multi-modeling approach. So we have different heuristics. You can do gravity-based link breakdown. So if you have a strong potential, then you will connect the two nodes. And you can also have cost-benefit heuristic or something more exotic like biological network generation. So these are examples of diversity of urban forms we can generate, and also diversity of network forms we can generate. Okay, we skip this, but we find that we can be quite close to existing form in terms of morphological indicators. This is a calibration, both on population distribution, spatial distribution of population, and network topology. And finally, we also find that this model have, in some case, some coevolution regime. So it's applying the methods I mentioned before to the outputs of this model. Okay, we'll skip the specific discussion because yeah, it's very specific things. And going to the macro level, Then you can apply also the detection method of coevolution to macroscopic model like the CPOTNet. It was done in this work. And also introduce some macroscopic coevolution model. So it was done in these two works. So here it's the same model as before, but you don't have innovation anymore. It's just population, network, and you still have the flow. So you've got direct interaction. So on the Giroux growth term, the GBRA model. You've got also a network term, retroaction of flows on city growth, and the network adapts. I don't give any equation. Oh, sorry, it's. Is it fuzzy? No, it's better now. Okay, this model is applied on a different type of system, like virtual networks, physical but synthetic networks, and on French urban systems. And we also explore with the PSC algorithms, for example, the kind of the diversity of hierarchical regime in terms of both population and network hierarchy the model can produce. And we also show that the model can indeed produce some coevolution regimes looking at the lag correlations. Okay, I will conclude with a discussion. Okay, I said toward go more complex model. Maybe they were already a bit complex if some economists were listening to us, but there is some work in progress to go to even toward more complex. And with Florent Lenessier, we designed the Lutetia model, which couples LUTI model with some transportation governance module with game theory for the network growth. So in this case, you've got deciders, which will take a decision to add some links or not. And more recently, I applied the same thing to a macroscopic level, and including governance into the coevolution model for multinational transportation projects. So you have these two countries with the boundary in the middle, and then you evolve your model with these governance processes. So I just presented it yesterday, actually, at the conference on complex systems. So it's on purpose. And finally, one thing we need is crucial to do is to build multi-scale models, because we think that to have a sustainable territorial policy, you need to take into account the different levels and the feedback between these levels. So first way to do this is try to build endogenous definition of urban system, and for example, megacity regions. Another exploratory work I did is to build a multiscalar urban growth model, coupling the spatial interaction model I mentioned before with the reaction diffusion model, but having strong feedback, both top-down feedback and bottom-up feedback, and looking at how this feedback modifies the trajectories. And finally, having the physical transportation network in a macroscopic coevolution model is a way to have some kind of multi-scale, because the network is between the global and the local. Okay, sorry for going very fast. And just to conclude, I think this work shows that urban evolution and coevolution are interesting paradigm to model, understand, and manage, sustainably manage. So we don't have yet a policy application, but the long-term research project is to go towards a policy application for urban systems. So there, everything is open. You can go on my GitHub, and I must acknowledge some funders and the good infrastructures. And you've got references here, but also then on the side, I will send the slide if you can distribute them. Thank you very much for listening.
All right. Well, thank you, Juste. That was a terrific overview. I mean, I really appreciate giving you the way you gave that context through the history of this theorizing, and then coming down now to the ground, what you've done. I think we have about 10 or so minutes for some question and answer. So I'll just open up the floor. Anybody who has a question, either use the chat to let us know, or raise your hand virtually, or just turn on your audio and video, or audio if you prefer that only, and then we'll let you. Oh, okay, there we go. Richard, can you ask that verbally? Or I can say it for you if you want. I'm happy to. Yeah.
Any specific explicit data?
So the question in the chat: are there any spatial explicit data involved in the model? If any, how detailed are they?
Yeah, good question. It depends which model. So for the let me go back. Okay. For the second model I presented, the urban evolution model, It's only a synthetic system, so there is no spatial explicit model. But for the coevolution model, so for the first one at the mesoscopic scale, it's actually calibrated on indicators computing on spatially explicit data on the real population grid and on the OpenStreetMap world network. So this point clouds, actually, you've got the real in red and the simulated in blue. So from this, we compute indicators and then compare. And then for the macroscopic model, the one on the French system of cities. Oh, it's white. Okay, sorry. Here it's parameterized on the real data for French cities between 1830 to 2000, and on a railway data on the same time period. So yeah, we've got GIS data to do this kind of model. But yeah, it's always difficult to find a compromise between how much data you put in it and how much synthetic part you have. Okay.
Okay, Tiago has a question here. I'll read it. How do you compute the flow between cities? Is it using a transportation network or some other way?
Okay, it's kind of a four-stage model, if you know transportation models. So first, we compute the flows between each city, so the pair flows, like with a gravity model. I gave one equation in the first for the first model, and then actually, we distribute it into the transportation network. So, for example, here in the first row on the bottom, you don't have any. It's what I call the abstract network specification. So it's just evolving the pairs distances, and here you don't have any transportation network. Then in the middle row, it's on the left. Here it's a physical network transportation, physical network specification. Sorry, and here we distribute the flows, but we don't have any congestion, and it's just a shortest path. So it's not really a four-stage model in that sense. And in the last stage, yes, it's the explicit transportation network, but still with no congestion. It's just distributing with shortest path. I don't know if it answers. Yeah. Sorry. What can I see?
Is that enough, Tiago? Or any follow-up?
Thank you, Just.
I have a question.
Yes, please. Yeah, Marianne, go ahead.
In your abstract and in the early part of your talk, you mentioned diffusion or transmission and transformation, which you called mutation. Yeah. Usually in evolutionary models, there's a third thing, selection. And I'm not sure whether that's included in your transformations idea or not. But of course, when you start talking about and using things like utility and penetration rate and stuff, I assume that it is in there. And I'm just wondering why you don't use the three in your talk, you know, that evolution is innovation or mutation, transmission and selection, because of course, many or most even innovations don't in fact get successfully diffused.
You're totally right. And I think I kind of forgot to explicitly put it in the paper, but it's in there, the selection process, because you see the way they diffuse, the delta here, the first formula, will be conditioned to the inverse of innovation. So better innovation will diffuse much further and much faster. Yeah. So this is a kind of selection driven by a spatial interaction also, because it's still weighted by spatial interaction.
But yes, I thought it was in your equations. Thank you.
Oh, I'll jump in there. I guess building off of what Marianne said too. I mean, you also, how are you thinking about the emergence of innovations? They just are sort of appearing here, but do you have a model for, you know, the appearance of different forms of variation?
Actually, it goes back to the question of endogeneity we had in the debate. No, here it's very simple, and so we capture this, let's say, this endogenous innovativity. We still capture it with the scaling law here, because you've got the probability of innovating will be a scaling law of the population. So it's capturing the way that a larger city has more innovative and so on. And in this sense, it's the endogeneity of innovation, but it's not explicit in the sense of how will individual agents have new ideas. And so it's kind of, how do you call this, phenomenological model in that sense. So it's just trying to reproduce what you observe, but in this level, not explaining it. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, Tiago here again. I think you're working at the macro scale. Do you think your models could be translated to a micro scale, for example, at the neighborhood level?
This model, no, I really don't think so, because it's really a macroscopic ontology. Like what I just said about the scaling law, it's really macroscopic, and you cannot do this at the micro. So, and I'm really into having distinct ontology depending on the scale. So that's when I presented the two other models, you see they are totally different, because one is at the macro and one at the meso, and it's really totally different paradigm. So I think this model directly has this, we cannot apply it. Maybe we can try to adapt the ideas and adapt this kind of thing at the micro or meso level. But I think it won't be the same model anymore. It will be a model inspired by this model. Because for me, it's really important to have processes corresponding to the scale, and it's really having some kind of ontological coherence depending on the scale. And it's annoying, but cannot directly switch. Okay. I just wanted to go to the discussion slide, but anyway, in the multi-scale model I mentioned, you really have this coupling between two scales, and this coupling between one ontology and the other ontology. So that's why also transferring model between scales is a very difficult question. So yeah, in this model, so you've got a reaction diffusion, so things linked to urban form, form and function, and so on. And at the other scale, you've got spatial interaction, and these are quite different processes and objects and so on. So yeah, I don't know if it answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that would be another very interesting project. I mean, I think you're right. Like it's better to think it through for its own sake at the neighborhood level. Like, what would the right ontology be? Yeah. I mean, that would be really fascinating too, in this respect, and how they would then, of course, you'd have to think about the interactions. Mm-hmm. I can keep asking questions forever, but I just want to make sure there's anybody else who has an interest, has an opportunity. We guys just have maybe time for maybe one and a half more.
Maybe a quick one.
Yeah, please.
How do you go from engineering to geography to evolution?
That's a good question. When I had to specialize at the end of my engineering school, I wanted to do something related to cities and on social science. So I had a lot of chance to come across my PhD supervisor, Arnaud Banos, which then linked me with Denis Pumin, and then I went into geography. So I learned social science and geography through my PhD. And then when I went into my postdoc, I had a bit of a comeback into more art things and art stuff. But, yeah, I try to be, it's very difficult to be interdisciplinary yourself, but I try to, yeah, to have this kind of interdisciplinary approach.
And that's great. I mean, that's the spirit of the School of Cities as well. You know, we have one of the guiding sort of requirements, I guess, not just a principal requirement for these projects, is they must be interdisciplinary, so that they're the kinds of projects that none of us would be doing on our own separately in our little areas. And so these are to push us out of those comfort zones and do things with others that we couldn't do on our own. So we're happy to have you here, and it seems like we found someone else who's got that similar sort of outlook. So I think it's 1 o'clock here. So I think this is a good time to thank Just for a wonderful presentation. So thank you. Do a little virtual.
Thanks again for
down there. We're really grateful, and we'll keep this line of dialogue open going forward in the future, and continue to learn from each other. So we'll sign off now, and hopefully continuing this forward in other media in the future.
Sure.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you very much. Thanks again.